We're here. Hello, everyone. Blind Metal Gamer here. Imagine in your life losing the right to make your own decisions, do what you want to do, be with the one you love, and be who you want to be as a person. My friend Denver Queen had that experience for 15 years in her life. She experienced 15 years of hell, unadulterated, pure hell in Guardianship, and today she's going to share her story. Welcome, Denver Queen.
Thank you. What's up?
All right. So, Denver Queen, you said you were under guardianship for 15 years. Could you please give me a synopsis of how that started and what it was like starting off and how you found out about this hell that you were about to endure?
Well, it started in 2004, and I had gone to a rehab center in Daytona, Florida. Daytona Beach has this little, what they used to call the Orientation and Adjustment Center. And I was systematically punished for basically associating with a 51-year-old guy at 17 years of age. And it all began with running into him at the mall during one of our field trips. And that was how it all kind of fell apart right there. And my parents freaked out because they were like, oh, she's going to have sex with an old man and he's going to have sex with a minor and all this. And they wanted a way to get a restraining order on this guy. And I won't say his name for the sake of his privacy. And I don't even know if the guy's still alive yet, but well, whatever. Um, but the guy basically ended up being told not to speak to me anymore. And then I was put in a situation in the fall of that year. I had to talk to some pretty stupid people, sighted people who were like, oh, well, she's not capable of, and she can't do anything. I mean,
Oh,
there was a guy who was a psychiatrist, and he just said, well, she doesn't have the capacity to do anything. Someone actually thought that I should not make educational decisions for myself. And I'm like, what the hell? But when I went to the attorney's office, it was the most difficult thing I ever had to see written down on paper. That someone had the guts to say that not only was I blind, but they said, oh, well, she has mental handicaps and emotional handicaps and all this crap. And all that was probably lies anyway, because my parents were at that point emotionally abusive. And I think it was my father who thought he could own me or something. Oftentimes in patriarchal cultures such as that of the Roman Italian Catholic churches, you have daughters that are basically the property of their dads, and that's what my dad
right,
wanted.
right. So, okay, that's when it started. So,
Mm.
what was it like? You find this out. What was it like in terms of what let's say someone like you had you went to college
Hmm.
under guardianship. What was the college experience like? What type of hell was that like?
Well, pure hell, should I say? I mean, one of the things that really bothered me about the guardianship was even going to the big university was a problem for my parents. So they forced me to go to a community college, which was too small and had no prestige whatsoever. Brevard Community College, formerly known as Brevard Community College, now known as Eastern Florida State College, as it's called.
Hmm.
It's just a Florida college, and of course now it's full of crap. I will never go back there again. But
So, okay, when you were there, did you live on campus? Did you live at home?
well, I lived at home when I went to the community college, but at Florida State, I had to live in the dorms.
Okay, so when you
And
were in the dorm at Florida State,
mhm,
what was it like? What was it like? Did your roommates and friends know you were under guardianship, or did
a
you have to
lot of
keep that
them,
secret?
I had to keep it secret. That's the issue. Like, my parents, not only did they try to make me keep it secret, but they robbed me of services that would have made it possible for me to be independent at Florida State University. I had to have people take me everywhere because I was not getting enough O&M training, which for the newbies who are listening, it's orientation and mobility. otherwise known as travel. I was
Right.
also not getting any kind of cooking instruction, and I was limited in what I could do as far as cooking goes. Like, I couldn't even cook things in my own room at one point in one of the dorms. Then I moved
So,
to a
in other words, if you had, let's say, a microwave, you couldn't even use that in your
oh, I
dorm.
could use a microwave, but no crock pot, no stove or oven. And I wasn't about to do that to the communal kitchen because then what if a girl decided to peel it off? All the buttons would have just been bye bye.
Right.
And I was real nervous about putting, markers on the stove and things like that. And you had to use the communal kitchens in the hallway.
Hmm.
And there were limits on food that could be served by the RAs, even. I mean, they were like, oh, they would do these like third floor girl dinners every so often, and they
Hmm.
had to be vegetarian and things like that because
Oh wow.
that was how liability happy these dorm people were.
So okay, you're in the dorm. You couldn't cook. What was it like? All right, if you did have a boyfriend at that time, what was that like under guardianship? What restrictions was that? What was that like under
I
guardianship?
couldn't marry. I could definitely not marry the person that I wanted to be with. If I had had a boyfriend, which I had no boyfriends, I didn't even have time for boyfriends, but people kept
Mm,
flirting with me, and I said, "Look, it's not cool. Don't flirt with me like that unless I say it's okay." And people got on my case about having boundaries, and they were like, "Oh, well, rot in a cage." One guy said that. And I actually ended up blocking him on AOL Instant Messenger, and then he blocked me on AOL Instant Messenger
block for
because
block.
yeah, block for block and blow for blow, because that guy was being a little antsy and he wanted to have sex with me before I even understood what sex was.
Hmm.
Not that I didn't understand what it was, but I wasn't married and I was like, well, who cares? But
Right, well, that and they didn't know your little secret about the guardianship either.
they actually did, and they made a big negative out of that secret. I told the guy that I had been found incompetent, and he basically just turned it all on me.
Damn. So okay, did you graduate from college? Did you
No.
okay, so you didn't graduate. Okay, so what restrictions did your guardian parents impose upon you after college did not work out? What type of restrictions and things did they do to make your life hell after
Well, for
college?
one, they tried to restrict my cell phone usage to 100 minutes a month, even when I was out of the house. So I got my first Denver number shortly after I graduated the Colorado Center for the Blind.
Mhm.
And I ended up going to Colorado Center for the Blind in order to get out of the guardianship, only to have people sit there and say, well, Beth needs guardianship because she's out of her mind. And let me tell you, there is absolutely no excuse to remove human rights, even if someone has a mental deficiency, such as, let's say, Alzheimer's, dementia, or even mental health delays or developmental delays. I mean, it's not cool to remove human rights. You put that person in a vulnerable position to be
Yes.
taken advantage of by caregivers, friends, family, and other people.
Right. So, okay. You went to the Colorado Center for the Blind, and
Mhm.
they even said you needed guardianship.
It wasn't th-
Um, okay,
it
what
wasn't that they said I needed guardianship, but I mean, there were
when
things they there were some people who believed that I needed guardianship at the Colorado Center for the Blind, but I told the staff, I said, I'm not going to allow it. And they tried to scale back my program. They tried to make exceptions or make me get a certificate because of the guardianship. And I just said, look, I am here as a co equal with the other students. I am going to complete my projects. I am getting the bell. And that's exactly what I got, a bell.
mhm.
And it took me 10 more years, about maybe 10 more years after that, to get free from the guardianship.
All right, we're gonna get to that point. Okay, so you get your bell, you leave the Colorado Center for the Blind.
Mhm.
Did you move into an apartment or move back home with your guardian parents or?
I moved into an apartment in the building that I'm in right now, except it was about a few floors below.
Okay.
Actually, it
So
was
when
like
you
2 floors
moved
below this one.
into your apartment, after that, did they try to impose any restrictions on you or anything like that while in the apartment as to who could help give you care if you needed it or who could visit, etc.?
I did have some caregivers in the previous apartment, and my parents couldn't really do anything about it because they were out of state. I
Okay.
kept the guardianship out of my caregiving paperwork and things like that.
Hmm.
And of course, now I can't even receive care because there are some issues with this building and a fair housing complaint.
Hmm.
And we're just, I don't think it's any use, but home care, unfortunately, was the only way I could have also had access to free non medical transportation.
Hmm.
It's like there's a caveat to every little thing I try to get, like resource
Right.
wise. You
Right.
have to be on this, you have to do that. And it's like,
Yeah, you have to do ABC, XYZ.
yeah, exactly.
So, okay, now let's fast forward a little bit. Um, can you tell me what it was like when you began working on getting free from guardianship and what process that was like?
The process wasn't even in my hands. I had to talk to doctors and psychiatrists, but on my parents' end, there was an attorney named Christy Mount who took over after this other guy, Rick Stadler, retired. And I'm calling these people out because they shouldn't even be doing this kind of work. Because guardianships for people with disabilities are a very touchy subject. And especially because it's just another way of saying we're going to put you in an institution. So, and
Yeah,
it's really
and
not fair.
no, and it's a lot more expensive. Did you know it's a lot cheaper to live in your community than it is in an institution?
Yes, I figured as much.
It is, and that's a
Yes.
fact. For those of you who are wondering, I suffer from a disability myself. The blind part of my name, blind metal gamer. I'm partially blind, so I kind of know what Denver Queen is going through as far as that. So, okay, you begin this process. Um, can you give a synopsis of what you had to do to end up being free from the guardianship?
Well, it took a lot of fighting, but I ended up exposing what my parents did on the radio show called Face Us. And several other outlets picked up the story about my guardianship. And I ended up talking to Face Us Radio with Lulu Fleming and Robin Austin, two very, very awesome advocates on the radio, blog talk radio, that is, but I don't normally use blog talk for a lot of my stuff anyway, but Lulu and Robin did not have the other two co hosts, Hillary Hogue and Marcy Friedman, with them at the time, but they did have a very good interview with me. We talked a lot about the aspects of the guardianship, what was unfair about it. And guardianship, even if you seek to protect someone, could still leave them in a vulnerable place. Because if my parents had died, for instance, and I was still under the guardianship or orders to be incompetent and stuff, my brother and his children might have gotten control of everything, and that wasn't really fair.
Right, because I can tell Denver
Mm.
Queen from our conversations, not only
Mhm.
this one but previous. You're definitely someone who could is definitely capable of doing your own thing, being your own person. Do
Mhm.
you have any type of message or advice for anyone who is currently under guardianship who is looking to get out of their own guardianship hell?
Well, for one, learn as much as you can about what guardianship actually does versus alternatives like supportive decision making. Learn about supportive decision making, especially if you have been diagnosed with ID, intellectual disability, or Down syndrome, or if you know someone with intellectual disability or Down syndrome or whatever. Alternatives to guardianship do exist, and you should never use guardianship. If you're one of those who wants to do it, I have a message for you guys. Do not use guardianship as the default when dealing with your adults with disabilities. Don't make them depend on you for anything just because you have a scrupulous desire to do so. Just because you think they're not capable, just because that doesn't make it okay for you to just put somebody in a vulnerable position like that.
No, it does not. Okay. Do you have any type of advice for families who have loved ones with disabilities, and some advice for them where they could possibly avoid putting their loved ones through guardianship hell?
Yes, indeed. If you have a teenager with any type of disability, you've got to start early as possible. Even if you have a young child with a disability, start preparing them for adult life as soon as possible. You need to be caring, nurturing, courteous, and kind to these people in your life. You need to put them in the best environment so that they get the skills they need to survive in the adult world. You have to make sure they are filling out job applications, or if they can't, what tools do they need to have the job applications filled out? Or if they can't work, you need to show them resources that will get them the kind of living that they would like away from you. But guardianship is not the way to go as far as, you know, keeping somebody safe and everything. You need to make sure you implement a supportive decision making plan, especially if you are afraid that your family member cannot take care of themselves, take care of someone else, and things like that. Because supportive decision making, what it will do is it'll allow you to put people, it'll also give the person the final say, but it's like having a team of people helping you with decisions and not making the decisions for you. You say what decision you want, and the team meets up and,
They help you make it.
they help you make a decision as a team, not with one person ruling the whole show.
Right. It's not one person ruling the deal. It's, for example, you say, hey, I want to go to a movie. The team gets together, they talk it out, and then the decision is made that way. And the person who talks about the decision first gets the final say after meeting with the team.
Right, that's kind of what it should be, at least. I've never actually been in a supportive decision-making situation.
Neither
However,
have
I
I.
know kind of what it works, what it is supposed to look like.
Right. I do
It's
from my work.
from Right, and supportive decision-making is the best alternative to guardianship, especially for you young ones. If you have an elderly loved one that you're considering putting in a guardianship, don't do it at all. You need to just let them keep and maintain their rights, but you can get other legal means to be their caregiver, like POAs, powers of attorney, and things like that. Should the person become unconscious or unable to speak for themselves, that is okay, but not a guardianship. What you can also do is if you're a person who has an elderly family member, make sure that and I'll talk to the young ones in just a second, but elderly people need to be in situations where they are not beat up or abused, including nursing facilities. I do not like skilled nursing facilities because of the frequency of abuse and assembly line institutional living. It's just not for everybody. And there could be like someone in a poopy diaper who is left in that poopy diaper for a little bit, and or the nurses have to run around tending to everybody's needs at once. And some nursing homes nowadays are even understaffed. So it is best if you do have an elderly woman, man, whatever person in your life that you really adore, keep them in your home. And if you need to make modifications to your home, so be it. They made sacrifices for you. Make sacrifices for your elderly parent or loved one.
All right. Do you have any advice for the young ones out there, the younger people that
Mm,
might be in need of supported decision making? Do you have anything
mhm.
that you would like to say to them or
Well,
their
if you're
families?
if you're young and you are in need of supportive decision making, first and foremost, think about who you want as your supports decision people. You can have as many people as you want if you have a trusted family, but if you don't have a trusted family, You do need to have casework people and people that are able to understand your disability from an inward perspective. And you do need to have friends. Everybody should have at least one or two trusted friends that they can count on. But as far as the young ones who don't need the supportive decision making, but for every person on this planet or who's listening here right now, always remember that your legacy matters, and you should at least try to make sure you have had something to leave behind when you're dead and gone and buried. For example, children, and I will update people on that in just a second. I'm actually 10 weeks along, and I'm about to have my first little guy, little kiddo. And when that little kiddo grows up to be about 18, that's when they become an adult. And when I get to be a really old lady, at least this couple of kids, I want to have a couple kids, but my partner and I have been pretty supportive of that. He's pretty great and supportive and stuff. But if you don't have children or grandchildren of your own and you're an elderly person, sometimes you can be a bit screwed, but you've got to make friends and have younger people around you who can act as a healthcare surrogate. And there's a whole lot I could go into about like a living will and stuff like that, which that can be a bit complicated depending on who you are and what disabilities you have. But I
Right.
learned about living wills when Terry Schiavo's famous little story popped up in the paper.
Yes, I remember that.
Oh my God, that was so weird. But a living will is so important, especially, and you got to have at some point an advance directive, such as like, what are they called? A do not resuscitate, DNR.
DNR, yeah.
You got to make sure you figure out when you want to institute the DNR. You also need to know when you want and how you want to be cared for, whether it's at home or who should care for you and stuff. And it's good to have at least a couple of younger contacts, including, I don't care if it's children and grandchildren, younger people of children and grandchildren, children of the brothers or sisters, nephews and nieces. It doesn't matter. You need to have people that you can trust in your circle that can. And if you don't, you need to find resources that do, because you don't want to be in a situation where a for profiteer comes in and takes advantage of you, then puts you in a box marked forgotten, like called the nursing facility, and then you end up dead.
All right, that's very sound. Real quick, before we wrap up, do you have anything you would like to say to anyone out there who um, is not familiar? I mean, do you have anything you want to say as far as final thoughts?
My final thoughts, well, I just think that I hope that all of you find this very informative, and I hope that all of you will take this information very seriously. And even if you don't, I hope that you will find this information and you will in the end, because this is very good information. I've also written pieces in my blog about how to make sure that con artists don't show up at your door and, do what they do. And that's part of how the guardianships get started. They knock on your door and they're like, "Oh, you're incompetent. I'm your guardian. Come with me." That's how it all gets started, especially for the elderly folks. So, got to make sure you're mindful of all that stuff.
All right, real quick before we wrap up here, I do want to say thank you, Denver Queen, for coming on, and I will let everyone know on YouTube. Be sure to like if you like what you hear in this, and comment down below and share with everyone you know. Also, if you want more great content, feel free to subscribe. It is absolutely free, and this will be on other podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Anchor, and many, many more. So, with that being said, until next time, I've been your host, Blind Metal Gamer for Denver Queen. So long, everyone, and peace out. And until next time, I'll see you on the blind side. So long, everyone.
So long. Awesome.